All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. As I mentioned in hour number 2, Steve Sanchez is going to be joining us in studio to debate this man. It's going to be good radio, I would think. Going to be a good debate between Michael Avenatti and Steve Sanchez. That's coming up in hour number 2. And we were just speaking about the motion that was filed in court yesterday in regards to Nike. And I went into some details, and we probably won't be going into any more details, but Michael Avenatti joining us on the line right now. Michael, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Excellent, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks.
Doing very well,
Thanks
Mike.
for coming on. We appreciate it, as always. Let me just open up with this question just to start this. What, if anything, can you tell us about the filing, the Nike filing that was in court, that was put into court yesterday?
Well, unfortunately, I'm limited in what I can say. I want to be really cautious, but what I will say is that obviously my attorneys and I stand behind what is contained in that filing. It's 100% true. It's well documented, and my position in this case has been consistent from day one, in that I am innocent of these charges. And I am confident that once the truth and the facts are known, that I'm going to be exonerated, and I'm looking forward to the court ruling on this motion.
Great. And we can move on, but I guess the one quick thing I wanted to ask you, there will be more filings, correct, in the future?
Oh yeah. There's going to be, we're only getting started.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
This is the warm-up lap.
That's what I figured. That's what I figured you would say. Okay, so we'll continue to monitor this story, and then when there are things that you can talk to or respond to, then hopefully we'll be able to do that in the future. I want to start with big news last night in Philadelphia. As you heard, Michael, 6 police officers were shot. It is an absolute miracle that they all are expected to fully recover. But I want to play you an audio clip from Jim Kenney, who is the mayor of Philadelphia. And in this clip, he is demanding for gun control. Have a listen to this, and then I want you to respond to it.
But our officers need help. They need help. They need help with gun control. They need help with keeping these weapons out of these people's hands, because this government, both on the federal and state level, don't want to do anything about getting these guns off the streets and getting them out of the hands of criminals.
So this is a big deal when the mayor talks like that after what could have been an absolutely horrific tragedy, Michael. What do you say to that?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. And, I've said this in the past. I'll say it again. I mean, if you talk to the people that are closest to this epidemic, and it is an epidemic in America, if you talk to the law enforcement officers and the mayors of these cities, 90% of them, if not more, are clear in their belief that we have to have some reasonable gun control in this country, and we certainly have to get assault weapons off the streets.
Yeah, no question. Mayor also, Philadelphia, declaring the officers deserve to be protected. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
Our officers deserve to be protected, and they don't deserve to be shot at by a guy for hours with an unlimited supply of weapons and an unlimited supply of bullets. We need to do something about it quickly.
He also comments on the NRA, about how politicians are kind of sucking up to the NRA. Here's what he had to say about that.
Whether it's our 6 officers who were shot, or it's some 15, 17, 20-year-old kid on the streets of Philadelphia who gets shot with guns that shouldn't be in people's hands. And it's just something that we need to do something about. And if the state and federal government don't want to stand up to the NRA and some other folks, let us police ourselves. But they preempt us on all kinds of gun control legislation.
What do you think about that, what he's talking about, Michael, in preempting?
Well, there's no question. I mean, the NRA is buying influence at the federal level and then utilizing that influence in order to prevent even reasonable gun control measures from being enacted in the United States. But this isn't anything new. I mean, we talked a couple of shows about the fact that, back in 1988 or 89, when I was a junior or senior in high school, I wrote a paper on the fact that the NRA's campaign against gun control was deceptive. I think that was the title of the paper. And so, this has been going on for 30 years.
Yeah.
And the influence of the NRA has not contracted during that time period. It's only expanded. And we are as far away, if not further away, from reasonable gun control today as we were 30 years ago.
Yeah, no question.
And, when you look at some of the polling data, I think it's 70 or 80% of Americans, if not more, believe that reasonable background checks should be enacted. And yet the politicians at the federal level who are beholden to the NRA and are frightened by the NRA and their power refuse to act.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have Mitch McConnell, who could have very easily reconvened the United States Senate in order to pass some reasonable gun control measures. He hasn't done that. You know, the shooting in New Zealand within the last, I think it was the last year or so, I think it took them 12 days to enact gun control legislation, as I recall. 12 days, certainly less than a month.
Right. And what have we done since the shooting, the school shooting in Connecticut? What have we done since Parkland? What have we done since Las Vegas? Nothing. A couple minutes here before we take a break, and I know we're going to continue this conversation with Steve Sanchez when he comes in the next hour, but it just seems like a lot of people that have been defending the president lately, your friend, Anthony Scaramucci, coming out saying he's not going to support the president in 2020. Now former Representative Joe Walsh, a Republican, conservative talk show host and prominent Tea Party figure, said late yesterday that he called President Donald Trump an unfit con man and a racial arsonist, and urged a primary challenge for the Republican nomination next year. Walsh also apologized for his own heated rhetoric over the years and for helping to elect Trump in 2016. Listen, Joe Walsh is a pretty prominent Republican figure. Michael, what's your response to that?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if this picks up steam. It appears that the momentum is building for a real primary challenge to Donald Trump. You know, one thing I don't think a lot of people are talking about is, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, but I believe the Republican Party changed their rules relating to the primary debates and the like a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, basically in an effort to protect Trump from a primary challenge. So there's many more hurdles that someone would now have to clear in order to mount a formidable challenge against Trump. Those hurdles were not in place 6 months ago. So the party could be put in a very difficult position, and there could be a battle for the control of the Republican Party depending on what happens. But, you know, unseating an incumbent president is incredibly difficult. Mounting a primary challenge against a sitting president, a successful one, is damn near impossible.
Yeah. All right. So before we go to break here, we only got about 2 minutes, Michael. But I am shocked, and I would think that this might shock you as well. Sean Hannity is defending Chris Cuomo. He went on Twitter and he said, I say good for Chris Cuomo. He's out with his 9-year-old daughter, his wife, and this guy's being a jackass in front of his family. Chris Cuomo has zero to apologize for. He deserves the apology. What do you, does that surprise you, Michael, that Sean Hannity came out in support of Chris Cuomo?
Well, I wasn't entirely surprised by it because I've had some personal interaction with Sean Hannity, and I know a lot of people on the left will get upset with me for saying this, but I'm going to call it like it is. You know, I actually, on a personal level, one-on-one, I get along with Sean. And, you know, and a lot of people will say this about him. I mean, he's not the same guy in person that he is on air. And, you know, he's a funny guy. He's very personable. So I've had decent interactions with him. We don't agree on much, obviously, and I've called him out for not having me on his show when he's taken some shots at me and the like. But I wasn't entirely surprised by his support for Cuomo. In fact, I responded to that and came out publicly and told him that, told Hannity that he deserved credit for calling it like it was.
Yeah.
With Cuomo. I respected that. But just backing up a minute, I mean, this is a problem, and people in the media have to face it. Politicians have to face it. I've had to deal with a number of people that have engaged in inappropriate behavior and confronted me when I've been with my kids, my daughters, my family. I stepped off a red-eye flight about 5 o'clock in the morning a few weeks ago in New York, and had some asshat that got in my face and wanted to start yelling creepy porn lawyer at me, while he was filming it.
I want you to continue.
This guy.
I want you to continue that conversation on the other side of the break, Michael. I'm up against a really hard break. I'm sorry to cut you off, but when we come back, I want you to continue that story. And then Steve Sanchez will be joining us. We'll also take your phone calls on the GCI hotline, 702-257-5396. Take a quick break, and we will be back right after this. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Steve Sanchez, who does a show here 6 to 8 p.m., will be joining us in studio at the top of the hour to get into a really spirited debate. I'm sure it will be. I won't really have to say much between him and Michael Avenatti, who joins us on the line right now. Michael was just talking about how he was not surprised that Sean Hannity came out in support of Chris Cuomo. But, Michael, what I didn't ask you was, what did you make of that video, that Chris Cuomo video?
Well, I was also supportive of Chris, publicly and privately. I thought it was, outrageous what this guy did. He clearly tried to set up Chris. He knew who he was. He knew that wasn't his name. He had his buddy filming it at the same time. And look, I know Chris personally. I've spent a lot of time around him, and the guy's in phenomenal shape. I mean, the guy's in just absolute phenomenal shape, and this guy is lucky that he didn't get completely laid out by Cuomo.
Do you think that they suspended him for a week on CNN, or is it a legitimate vacation? They just wanted things to cool down. What do you make of the fact that Chris Cuomo, not on the air this week?
I don't know. I know that he had a birthday recently, I think a few days ago, so maybe he took the week after his birthday off. I mean, it's the summer months. I don't know if he was suspended or not. I don't think he should have been suspended because he didn't do anything wrong. And also, let me say this. I am consistent in my approach on these things. I don't care if you're on the right or the left or where you line up. You have a right to a certain degree of privacy and respect when you're out somewhere publicly. And, social media has helped fuel this belief that because you're in the public realm, people believe that they can come up to you and start yelling obscenities or names at you, even though they've never met you before in your life, just simply because you may express a view politically that they don't agree with.
Michael, can I ask you?
I think that's wrong.
Michael, very, very important question here. Who do you believe benches more, Steve Sanchez or Chris Cuomo?
I don't think Michael's ever seen Steve Sanchez, so that would be a hard question for him to answer, right, Michael?
I don't know what Steve's measurements are as far as his height and weight and, how old he is. I don't know what the back of the baseball card looks like, but I got to tell you, Cuomo's in pretty damn good shape, guys.
So, Michael, you just talked about people coming up, to people in public and saying ridiculous things. I would imagine, I don't think this would be far-fetched to believe, you've had a lot of people over the last few years do that to you, which I can't imagine how annoying that is. Can you give me an example of how you had to restrain yourself? I would imagine you have to do that on a daily basis, where somebody comes up to you, whether it's a Trump supporter or whoever. Just give me an example of a situation where if you didn't control yourself, you could have been a horrible situation. I would imagine you get that all the time.
Well, I've been very fortunate. I don't get it all the time. It happens occasionally. More often than not. It's probably 99 to 1. People come up to me and they thank me for the work that I do, and they want to take a picture and want to chat with me, which is, very flattering and nice. But there are occasions where it happens. I'll give you two examples. One occasion was I was out to dinner in Los Angeles, and I went to the bathroom, and a guy followed me into the bathroom and wanted to have a confrontation with me while I was at the urinal.
Was it Biff? Okay.
and I looked at the guy, and I said, some very choice words along the lines of, look, we're not doing this in the bathroom. If you want to step outside, that's fine, but this is a safe zone. The bathroom's a safe zone. And there were some other guys in the bathroom that just couldn't believe that some guy would confront me in the John.
Well, when we were walking with you on Fremont Street, there was a couple of people that actually shook your hand. And
yeah, they
said,
were very nice to you.
That was cool.
Yeah, they were nice to you. Okay, so you got a guy that follows you into the bathroom at a urinal. I'm just curious. What did he say to you? Can you say it on the radio?
He was upset that I was attacking, quote, his president, close quote.
So he follows you into the bathroom? Oh, my God. All right. So give me another one. You said you had two.
Well, I've had many more than two, but the two that pop to mind are the urinal incident, and then a few weeks ago, I stepped off a red-eye flight in New York at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and evidently there had been some guy on my plane that followed me off the plane, and he wanted to confront me in the terminal at 5 a.m. I've had about 2.5 hours sleep, and wanted to get in my face and start yelling "creepy porn lawyer" with his phone on, trying to get a reaction out of me. So, it's just, it makes no sense. These people, I would never go up to somebody that I've never met in my life and start yelling at them and calling them names. I mean,
and that's a good point. Someone does that. They try to get it recorded. They put it on YouTube. If it goes viral, you can get a couple million hits. They're going to get paid 30, 40 grand for that video.
So Michael,
shouldn't that be a crime? I feel like that should be a crime.
How would that be a crime, Michael?
Well, I think, in light of the fact that if you're a public figure, you lose a lot of rights, unfortunately. And I will say this, although I don't agree with the motive behind it, Trump has made some statements in the past that perhaps our laws need to be amended relating to public figures being able to sue for defamation and the like. And I happen to agree with that, because you're a public figure should not give people the right to engage in some of the conduct that they engage in now.
No question. Now, if anybody could relate to what Chris Cuomo had to go through, it is you. I mean, and anybody else who is recognizable that have trolls that would come up to them and say those sorts of things. So I'm actually totally in agreement with you and with Sean Hannity. I don't always agree with Sean Hannity on a lot of things, but I'm with you on that. I will give Sean Hannity a lot of credit for defending Chris Cuomo. And I'd imagine Hannity has to go through the same stuff. I remember I was at the Democratic National Convention in Boston many, many years ago. And I remember I saw Democrats go up to Sean, and they were very rude to him, and I thought he handled it very well. This was off the air. And that's a difficult thing to do. And I think Cuomo, especially the fact that he was with his family, I don't blame him for acting the way he did.
And Michael, have you ever had a situation where you've been with your kids and that's happened to you, or someone has approached, or someone has tried to heckle your children?
Yeah, it happened probably 3-4 months ago. I was in on a day.
Michael, I think we lost you a little bit. You there? I think we might have. I think we might have lost Michael Avenatti. Somebody might have gone up to him. I don't know. But we'll get Michael back on the line. I think he might be on an Obama phone. I don't know. We'll get him back. I promise. By the way,
if I know Michael, he is not on an Obama phone.
Probably not. But the guy wears on a consistent basis $5,000 suits. He dresses very nicely. I could get some tips from Michael. By the way, there's no question. I could get some tips from Michael. But by the way, I just want to go over real quickly. Steve Sanchez is going to be joining us in about 15 minutes or so. He's going to be debating Michael live on the air, and I believe that is Michael that has rejoined us. That was JD. That was a really good question. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry
okay,
about that.
That's okay. Start from the beginning.
So a few months ago, I was walking through an outdoor shopping center in Southern California with my daughters on a Sunday. Spending some quality time with them and enjoying our day. And I had some guy walk up to me and start yelling at me about me taking on the president and how dare I take on Trump. And, it was my daughters who are 16 and 14 were very startled and, very upset by it. And I didn't take too kindly to it.
Well, you can't.
For obvious reasons. I mean, you don't walk up to me and start a confrontation with me in front of my daughters, especially when you've never met me before.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's completely ridiculous. I think some laws need to be put in place. I wanted to move on to Steve King, a guy that I haven't brought up in several months. The racist Steve King, disgraced. I don't know if you had a chance, Michael, to hear these comments that he made yesterday, saying that there would that whether there would be any population left on Earth if not for rape and incest, a remark that has drawn condemnation from both Democrats and Republicans. First of all, why are people still coming out to listen to this guy, number one? And number two, can you believe that there is a GOP representative out there, like a guy like a Steve King, who makes comments like this on a regular basis still?
Well, I can't believe that there's a representative in the United States House of any party. I don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. I mean, this guy does not belong in a position of governance. This guy shouldn't even be a dog catcher, let alone a member of the U.S. House.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, this guy is completely whacked out, and this isn't the first time that he has made outrageous statements. And the fact that he was reelected the last time was shocking to me. But he needs to go.
It's almost like he doesn't even want to be in Congress anymore. When you make a statement like that, I mean, something that over the top and ridiculous, I mean, there's no way he takes himself seriously. And the crazy part is, if he does resign or if he does get kicked out of Congress in the near future, it'll be much more difficult for the Democrats to win that seat come 2020. It'll actually help Trump. Do you think that Trump is possibly telling him to say ridiculous things to get himself out of Congress, Michael?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think the Democrats have any real shot of winning Iowa anyway. So no, I don't think Trump is telling him that. But I think that in some ways Trump is setting a bad example for political candidates, especially Republicans, because a lot of these Republicans see what Trump's able to get away with, and they think that they can get away with much the same.
Michael, here's where, we agree on a lot of things. Here's where I think we definitely agree on. We've talked about this when you've come in studio about how we need more Democrats, more people like you to go on Fox News. We need more Republicans to go on MSNBC and CNN, and we all agree on that, right? And you've done that. You've wanted to go back on Hannity. You've wanted... You've gone on Tucker Carlson. He has not invited you back. I think there are a lot of cowards out there. But I want to talk to you a little about Stephen Colbert. I like his show. I think he does a really good job. But he made some comments on yesterday stating that he would not allow Trump back on his show. I want to play this, and then I want to get your reaction to it.
No, because it would be hard for me to be properly respectful of the office because I think that he is so disrespectful of the office that it's very hard to perceive him as I would want to perceive a president in terms of their status and the dignity and the representation of the United States. So I think just for safety's sake, it wouldn't be a good idea.
What do you think about that, Michael? Stephen Colbert saying he would not invite Donald Trump back on his show.
Well, I think that was more a reflection of Colbert being self-aware of who he is. I mean, basically what he's saying, or at least this is my take, is that were Trump to come on his show, he thinks that it would digress to a very confrontational situation, and he couldn't control himself, meaning Colbert. Now, you can argue as to whether that's proper or not, or whether he should be able to control himself in the position that he's in with Trump. But I think it's a reflection of how passionate he is relating to his beliefs against Trump. I mean, I'd rather him do that and be open and honest about it on the front end than do, for instance, what Tucker Carlson did to me, which was have me on his show, lead me to believe that it was going to be, a fair opportunity, and then, completely blindside me and sandbag me in an effort to try to embarrass me, which he wasn't successful. But, I don't have any respect for somebody that does something like that. But, I think Colbert was being open and honest about his personal beliefs and the fact that he just doesn't think he could pull it off.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I think that you're a coward if you're going to talk about somebody behind their back and then you don't give them an opportunity to come back on. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. We all could agree on that. So, Michael, I want to save for the next hour when Steve comes in studio, Israel blocking the entry of Omar and Tlaib. I want to talk to you about that in the next hour, but I do want to touch on this. Rand Paul made a statement last night that I thought was a little bit over the top and ridiculous, but it's Rand Paul, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised. He said that he wanted to offer to buy Omar a ticket to Somalia so she, quote, might come back and appreciate America more. What do you say to that?
Well, again, I think it's another comment aimed at division and aimed at, us against them. This whole concept that, people that look different than we do, meaning, white people, that somehow, they're wrong just by nature of where they come from or the fact that they happen to not be Caucasian. I think it's outrageous. It has no place in American politics or otherwise. But statements like this certainly should not be made by people that are in leadership positions or positions of power. Mm-hmm. People in those positions have heightened responsibility to lead by example on these issues. And, I think it's disgusting. And I think it starts at the top.
Yeah, I agree. We've heard it the last several weeks, the send her back chant. And then we've talked about the squad and the comments that Donald Trump made on Twitter telling them to go back to their country. 3 of 4 of those women were born right here in the United States. And after all this rhetoric and after Rand Paul took a lot of heat for one of the only people of 2 people trying to stop that 9/11 responders bill from passing, with all the negative press that he has received and all the flack he's taken on every network, even Fox News. The fact that he is saying that he will offer Omar a ticket to go back to Somalia so she can come back and appreciate America more, is he just completely unaware of the surroundings around him? How do people like Rand Paul, I guess this is my question, how do people like Rand Paul consistently get elected into office?
Well, because there's a significant segment of the electorate that agree with him and agree with Donald Trump. And that's what's so frightening about where we are right now. And there's also people that are just below the surface that happen to agree with him. And when those people hear people in a position of leadership like Rand Paul or Donald Trump make these statements, then all of a sudden they become acceptable. And people believe that they too can behave like this. Mm-hmm. And this becomes a cycle, a very dangerous cycle.
Speaking of dangerous, go ahead.
So I think that's the answer. There's a segment of the electorate that has been energized by these statements by people like Rand Paul and Donald Trump. And it's very frightening, as we've talked about.
Speaking of frightening and dangerous, I'm sure you heard this story, Michael. A man just pled not guilty, but it's pretty clear he's guilty. He's body slammed this boy for not removing his hat during the national anthem. Me and JD have talked about this the last few days. And his lawyer basically says it's, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, right?
This guy is using Donald Trump as a scapegoat. He's saying, oh, no, Trump told me to do it. I thought that it would be right. I don't believe that a 39-year-old man, I think he's trying to just get out of this by blaming this on Trump. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if I agree with you, JD, but let's let Michael respond to that. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I actually do agree. A 39-year-old man, I don't think it's a defense to say
exactly.
Anybody told me to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if you think that your dog told you to do it, or the president of the United States, or some alien that landed in your backyard, whatever the excuse is. This guy has to bear personal responsibility. He's a grown man, for Christ's sake. He's 39 years old. So I don't think it's a defense.
And
I don't think it's a defense to the case or to the assault that occurred.
But
now, on the flip side,
go ahead. I was just go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
All right. On the flip side, again, I'm gonna repeat what I said moments ago, which is we cannot ignore the fact that when you have the president of the United States who makes these outrageous comments that are designed to stoke and flame racial tensions, we can't ignore the fact that those comments have consequences.
Sure.
They have consequences. There is nobody, you can make an argument that there is no one on the face of the planet that has the ability to communicate and have those communications have impact more than the president of the United States. Well, you could make that argument.
Maybe the Kardashians give him a shot because of their following. But, yeah, I totally agree. I just hope that this guy is prosecuted properly and Trump isn't given any type of – or he's giving no leniency because he says, unless he's severely mentally handicapped, which I don't believe that he is.
He has traumatic brain injury, this gentleman.
Okay.
I read a little bit about him. He has traumatic brain. He's in a very serious car accident. And people are saying that he has, I guess, the emotional level of a third grader. You take all that into account, and a man that perhaps watches Fox News all day. Again, I don't know. But, you have the president of the United States who's constantly going after people kneeling, calling NFL players sons of bitches for kneeling during the national anthem. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that Donald Trump is the only person responsible for this guy. No, this guy's obviously responsible. But, Michael, I do believe that the president does play a role in this, and he plays a factor.
Well, he plays a role and a factor, but not to the extent where we're going to allow people to utilize that as a defense in a criminal case. But there's no question that it has an impact. And there's no question that the division that we have right now is certainly, in my view, I'm 48. I think we are more divided now than we've been in my lifetime. And that is only growing by the day and the week. And I don't know where this ends, but I'm very concerned about it.
Yeah, we just can't have this guy saying that Donald Trump is Jiminy Cricket on his shoulder telling him what to do and getting away with it, because it could set a really bad precedent for the future for other criminals. Do you agree with that, Michael?
Yeah, 100%. But I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
I don't think so either.
With the judge in that case, I'd be shocked if it got any traction whatsoever.
All right, well, Michael, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a break, but when we come back at the top of the hour, Steve Sanchez is going to be joining us, and I'll give you a little bit of a preview, Michael, of some of the topics that we are going to get to with Steve Sanchez, and I would imagine you will probably disagree with Steve on a few of them. We're going to talk about Israel blocking the entry of Representative Omar and Tlaib. We're also going to come up with some new information here in regards to Jeffrey Epstein, and it is some riveting new information, and some people might not like it, but some of the autopsy details have come out. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and even throw in In-N-Out Burger and why Democrats are saying that they all should abolish In-N-Out Burger. So, Michael, stick around, okay? We'll be back here in just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and it'll be an all-out brawl. I promise you that. It's going to be a fun hour. Michael Avenatti will be taking on Steve Sanchez coming up next. You're listening to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So when we come back, I promise you, folks, this is going to be an all-out brawl on the radio. It's a lot of fun. So if you don't know who Steve Sanchez is, he's done a national show here Sunday nights, and he just started 6 to 8 p.m., the slot that we were doing. And I went on his show last night. It was a good time. And I said, why don't you come in, and let's do an hour with Michael Avenatti. And I think it's going to be – well, I don't think. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to a lot of subjects. That's coming up next. Michael's still on the line. We're going to get to this latest story. Representative Omar and Tlaib, Israel blocking their entry. Wow, this is a big story. Make no mistake about it. I think it does bring apart a dangerous precedence. So we're going to talk about that coming up next, and gun control, and, of course, Epstein. We'll get to that coming up next. Listen to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN.